Out in the middle of the Atlantic, a fisherman sat in his boat, bored out of his mind. His fishing rod hadn't twitched in an hour. Suddenly, it bent like it was hooked onto a whale. Excitement filled him as he tugged with all his strength. But his joy turned to horror when a massive crab claw shot out of the water, snapping at the fishing line. A second claw followed, and with one terrifying pinch, the crab crushed his boat like a soda can. The fisherman screamed as the boat splintered, but before the crab could grab him, a massive cargo ship sailed by, its horn blaring. The monster hesitated, then disappeared into the depths. Sailors on the ship pulled the soaked and trembling fisherman aboard, but his relief was short-lived. Looking over the side, he saw a crab the size of a car, circling the ship like a shark. Without warning, the creature's claw lunged up and clamped onto the ship's metal hull, sending a deafening screech through the air. "Full speed ahead," the captain shouted. The ship jolted forward, the engines roaring, and the claw ripped free. The crab vanished into the waves, but the nightmare was far from over. The ship reached the shore, where the air seemed heavy with something wrong. As the crew disembarked, the sand beneath their feet started to sink, forming whirlpools. From these sandy pits emerged giant crabs, hundreds, no, thousands of them. Each one was larger than the last, their claws snapping as they marched toward the water. Panic erupted. Beachgoers screamed and bolted inland as the monstrous crustaceans swarmed the shoreline. Videos flooded the internet, showing massive crabs invading beaches across the globe. No one knew why this was happening, until scientists put the pieces together. Crabs molt to grow, shedding their old shells and forming new ones deep in the sand for protection. But this time, something went terribly wrong. They burrowed much deeper than usual, staying hidden for 6 months. In that time, they grew to unimaginable sizes, their appetites growing even faster. Normal food wouldn't cut it anymore. Now they needed meat. One day later, thousands of crabs surfaced on oceans worldwide. Their eyes, like submarine periscopes, scanned cities from above. Claws sliced through power lines, flipped cars, and smashed windows. People fled to narrow alleys, thinking they'd be safe. But the crabs, undeterred, turned sideways and squeezed through the tightest spaces, their claws snapping with terrifying precision. On rooftops, terrified survivors watched as the crabs dismantled their cities. Doors and walls crumbled under the relentless attacks. Helicopters swooped in to rescue the trapped, but the crabs kept coming. On Christmas Island, where the crab population was always high, the situation was worse. Tens of millions of giant red crabs marched from the rainforest to the shore, demolishing everything in their path like a living tidal wave. Cities around the world erected towering walls to keep the crabs out, but it wasn't enough. The crabs didn't just stay near the water. They moved into forests, rivers, and even towns. They were unstoppable. Desperate and outnumbered, humanity began to flee to deserts, where the dry conditions offered some protection. But supplies were scarce and hope dwindled. Then, someone remembered an old fisherman's trick: crab traps. Crabs can't resist pulling each other back when one tries to escape. Using this instinct, people dug massive pits lined with concrete, baited with fish and seaweed. The plan worked. The giant crabs, lured by the scent, tumbled into the traps and couldn't climb back out. After months of terror, the tide began to turn. The crabs were captured and contained. Some were even sent to markets, where people marveled at the idea of a crab feast like no other. Humanity survived, but the scars of the great crab apocalypse remain, a reminder of what happens when nature takes a terrifying twist. For now, the world is safe. But deep in the ocean, where no light reaches, whispers of something even bigger stir. And this time, it's not crabs.